when that happens and all of the conversation about this show is at such a fever pitch, I genuinely think that it gets a little bit harder for conservatives to claim that their weird niche fascist views are actually the norm.
Welcome back to Making It Awkward, an independent podcast. I'm your host, Jessica Wilson, clinical dietitian and author of It's Always Been Ours. You can find me on Instagram at jessicawilson.msrd. You can watch the show on YouTube. You can email the pod at makingitawkwardpod@gmail.com. You can rate, review, subscribe to the show. You can join the Patreon for as little as $3 a month. And if you leave a review or a comment, my dad will come back to the show to read them. You can buy podcast merch on my website that says, I came, I saw, I made it awkward. Today's episode is the second about heated rivalry. Last week, I interviewed Blake Flahar about the show, and you can find our discussion about coming out, the importance of representation and bottoming, and how women are often involved in the literal and metaphorical storylines of gay men, which tees up today's episode perfectly. Today, Lindsay Lee Wallace returns to the show to tell us what hot gay hockey smut is teaching us about women who have sex with men. Lindsay wrote an article titled Yearning and Submission in Heated Rivalry. In it, she says, women who yearn and submit are often main characters, but they are simultaneously seen as frivolous and typical. Their yearning and submission aren't treated as meaningful or as specific to them and their relationships. Women are just a girl, and being trivialized feels like shit. So it can feel easier and freer to step back from the equation entirely. Watch two men yearn for one another, which maintains their masculinity. Lindsay and I talk more about her article and explore additional topics like the pop culture pundit panic in late 2023 when a UCLA survey found that Gen Z wanted less sex in media. The report, titled Romance or No-Mance, stated that almost half of Gen Z felt that romance is overused in media and sex is unnecessary for the plot of most TV shows and movies. Lindsay and I discuss our hypotheses about why this same age group has not shied away from joining the heated rivalry fandom.
If you like heated rivalry, dancing, pop music, and meeting new people around a shared interest, then the event I went to is definitely for you. What you're seeing here is Heated Rivalry Night at the Vermont in Hollywood, a packed dance floor, fan edits on the walls, and a room full of people who love this story just as much as you do.
Lindsay and I also talk about how this wasn't just a good show of gay hockey smut. It was a good show. Francois Arnon, who plays Scott Hunter on the show, talked with CBS Morning's host about why the show was made in Canada and not the U.S.
What's interesting is this was just supposed to be a small show on a platform most of us haven't heard about.
Streaming platform.
On a streaming
platform. In Canada.
And kudos to HBO. They picked it up when?
2 weeks before the premiere.
2 weeks before.
And decided to air it on the same day.
Yeah.
As Crave, which is the Canadian streamer. And to be fair, though, I don't think this show could have been made in the U.S.
You don't?
It was set up at a big
Really?
streamer before, and they had so many notes and so many thoughts on what that show could be that Jacob decided to leave them and get it made in Canada, where it was, granted a much smaller budget, but he was like, I can do the show that I want to make. And I think that's what people are responding to. And I think in a way, it's a huge lesson for Hollywood people. Like, this is like a niche show, niche theme, like no movie stars, and it's a much bigger sensation.
In our chat, Lindsay also gives the intimacy coordinators their flowers.
There's a scene in episode 1 that takes place in a hotel where the main characters, Shane and Ilya, are hooking up for the first time. I think it's also the longest sex scene in the show. It might be somewhere between like 7 and 9 minutes. Yeah. Can you walk us through the process of choreographing that scene? Like, how did you do that?
We had a full day of rehearsals with the cast and myself and Jacob, which was just wonderful. Like, often in films, you don't have time, or the production thinks you don't have time to rehearse, but it makes such a massive difference when the actors can get the motions in their body before the day where there's 1,000 lights and all these people behind them. We always have a private rehearsal and blocking before we actually film any simulated sex or nudity or anything like that. A ton of them that you're seeing play out were scripted. And so a big part of that was just honestly making sure we had the order of things correct, and that then it was able to feel intuitive for them.
And we discussed how the smallest touches like lighting can really help a series go from good to great. We recorded this episode weeks ago, and since then, the fandom of Heated Rivalry has increased. Recently, there was a Heated Rivalry-focused tattoo event for people who wanted to show specific quotes and characters on their bodies in perpetuity. Heated Rivalry merch is a booming industry, and Connor Story, who plays co-lead Ilya, will be hosting SNL later this month. Heated Rivalry has led to some good news in 2026, which we've all needed. Due to the popularity of the show, multiple gay professional athletes have felt comfortable coming out. Another bright light is that after director Jacob Tierney was asked about Heated Rivalry author Rachel Reed's Parkinson's diagnosis during a CNN interview, Reed was contacted by a specialist who has started to coordinate her Parkinson's care. Reed explained, quote, "I've never gotten to a Parkinson's expert. I've been on a 5-year waiting list here because I live in a very small place," end quote. Heated Rivalry may restore some interest in reading books and perhaps increase the literacy rate. Leading up to the winter storm in late January, New York Mayor Mamdani recommended that people stay inside, saying,
"And I can think of no better excuse for New Yorkers to stay home, take a long nap, or take advantage of our public library's offer of free access to Heated Rivalry on ebook or audiobook for anyone with a library card."
After that announcement, the number of downloads of Heated Rivalry increased by 529%. And with that good news, here's my conversation with Lindsay. Lindsay, welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much. So happy to be here. So happy to be here to discuss this topic.
Absolutely. One of the best things to happen on HBO in a very long time. So
one of the best things to happen in a very long time compared to all the other things that are happening.
That's a really good point. And perhaps the best thing to have happened to television and streaming services like ever.
Yeah.
Not even in a long time. So I was talking about doing a Heated Rivalry episode and told you about it. And then you sent me your article and I was like, yes, we need at least 2 parts of a Heated Rivalry discussion. And so I'm so glad you were able to join us and tell us more about it.
I'm so excited to be able to. It's funny because, you know, I wrote that, I think at the end of last year, like December, and then it has like continued to, like the actors from the show were torchbearers at the Olympics, and like the meteoric rise of how famous 2 people can get from one TV show does not seem to know bounds. And I have started to sort of like deliberately disengage from a lot of the stuff about it, mostly just because I don't want it to feel like when you like listen to the same song over and over again and it stops hitting. I want it to be the case that when season 2 comes out, I'm like, wow, I miss these guys, rather than like, here are these guys that I've been watching every day for however long. But all of that being said, it's a conscious effort. So getting to talk about it with you, I'm really prepared to do that. I still really would like to be doing that.
Great. I'm glad I'm not making you do something against your will. And I'm glad you mentioned the longevity of their fame. When I was thinking about this, I was like, oh, will I be too late in this like market to be talking about Heated Rivalry? Will people have moved on? And I was like, oh, surely not. Olympics are coming. We'll just be right on time. Granted, they did bear their torches on, I believe it was January 25th. But yeah, people are going to be talking about hockey and yes, and trying to piggyback off of the fame of this for a very long time. So we'll just, be one of many.
I love a piggyback ride. I like to not walk where I'm going.
Okay. Let's get into what Heated Rivalry is. You have watched the series. You've also read the book. Tell us, what you took away, what Heated Rivalry is.
Yes. I only read the book that is called Heated Rivalry. There's also a book called The Long Game that I have not read, just in case that's relevant and I say something that makes me sound stupid. But
no, actually, that's a good point. Like, the obsession has been only with the second book, which is Heated Rivalry in the series. So I think it's fair to say like the conversation we are having is specific to this one. So I think you're good.
Yeah. Well, there's also, I don't remember the name of the book that's about Kip and Scott and the smoothies and the third episode, which I feel is highly divisive. I personally am kind of a third episode hater, but that's, you know.
So excited. Okay. Oh, this is great. I need to hear. Okay, we're gonna start at the top. We're gonna paint a picture.
Yeah.
Yes. Heated Rivalry. Ready, set, go.
So Heated Rivalry is a television show about two professional hockey players who are carrying on a secret romance that begins as just sex and then blossoms into them having feelings for each other. And it's based upon a book series by Rachel Reed, who seems by all accounts to be an extremely lovely, cool person. And I'm so like, one of my main takeaways has been that I'm just so happy for her about this happening. But it is shot in such a way that you can tell that all the people involved in making it were like, we are making a good TV show rather than just, we are fulfilling the allotment that like gay people with money require of one television show or movie on a mainstream streamer per year. And it really shows, and it is just really good TV. Like, to a certain extent, people keep being like, why do people like this so much? And it's like, well, it's a well-made television show and we like those.
Yeah. Were you surprised to see it released on HBO?
Not really. I feel like that was I don't know. HBO has shown me far more graphic things than any of the sex in Heated Rivalry. And HBO has also shown me equally gay things as the sex in Heated Rivalry. So mostly I was relieved because I had literally for like months, I had in a tab on my phone, like Heated Rivalry Canadian TV show ? Because I had seen something about it and I was like, I know that I'm going to want to watch that, but I don't think I'll be able to get it because I'm not in Canada. And then my very good friend Colin was like, I need to show you this. And I was like, how will we watch it? And he was like, it's on HBO. Yay.
And it came out on your birthday, from what I hear.
On my birthday. And that's sort of because of how celestial forces are always conspiring to affect
your
my
Saturn
life.
return. You needed something good.
Exactly.
Yes. Okay, so I sent you a reel from Francois Arnaud, who plays Scott Hunter in the show, and it talked about the production of the show, which I had not known was supposed to be in the US, but was moved to Canada.
I mean, in Canada, they have, government-sponsored gay hockey smut, and we don't even sponsor public broadcasting in this country, so I can understand that decision. I think it makes sense that it happened in Canada because, I mean, ultimately, like Rachel Reed is Canadian, Jacob Tierney is Canadian. He also made the TV show Letterkenny, which is like very fun, offbeat Canadian humor to the extent that I understand Canadian humor as an outsider. Hudson Williams, Francois Arnaud. I think Connor Story is the only American in like the main like group of people that people talk about when they reference the show. So that makes sense to me. And then also the fact that like they can get government funding for their gay hockey smut and we can't get government funding for, measles vaccines. So yeah.
Makes sense. Yes. Okay. And then you were also impressed with the intimacy coordinator as well.
Yeah, I really love one of the things that I feel like has been really fun about the conversation around Heated Rivalry has been how many people whose jobs in film and TV aren't necessarily always talked about in a press tour or like featured heavily by fans getting excited. Even more that part, even more like fans don't get excited about these parts. Like Heated Rivalry has had, one of the biggest creators to come out of it is Valentina V, who talks about the cinematography on social media and makes videos talking about, the camera that would have been used to shoot a scene a certain way and has people engaging with that as not just like a interesting BTS thing, but like an active part of the artistry of making the show. Chala Hunter, who is the intimacy coordinator, talking about like the work that went into making the sex on the show look like obviously, very hot, but also like organic. Like there are so many little gestures and little moments that are the kinds of things that I feel like a like rabid fan base running away with itself would be like, this is evidence that they're actually into each other and it was improvised in the moment. But really it's the result of a bunch of professionals doing their jobs and like people knowing how to sell you the idea of intimacy and love and passion. And I actually really appreciate that about film and appreciate that that's part of the conversation about this TV show specifically.
Yeah. I was watching one reel of them answering a question about the sex scenes, and they were like, yeah, we don't even think about them as, sexy, because every 5 seconds they were like, show more face, or like stop and do this, that, and the other thing. So, it was just like acting, which I think is always important to mention, because the obsession, the attachment to, the idea that it was real sex or that they were really into each other. It's always so wild and it's happening amongst like grown people, not like teenagers now.
Yeah, it's very like, you can't enjoy the story unless you don't believe that it's just a story, which I don't think is like healthy or fair to the people who made it, because it lends itself to like the sort of stuff that's happening now where people are like harassing the actors because they believe that they might be in like some permutation of relationships with one another that the fandom doesn't think are appropriate relationships. And it's like, first of all, there's no evidence for that. Second of all, that's none of your business. Third of all, please don't make these people's lives dangerous because you liked their TV show.
Yeah, what do you think about the privacy aspects and any of the other conversations you've seen in pop culture?
I feel like the like speed with which they got super famous and the fact that they got super famous for this queer TV show made me think about Chappell Roan and how like meteoric her rise to pop stardom was last summer. Was that last summer? I don't know. The passage of time isn't real, but I really loved Chappell Roan, and I had seen her in concert. And I remember that when she started to get super famous, I was like, well, thank God I saw her, because I'm never going to be able to afford to do it again now that every single person on earth is, doing the hot to go dance. But there was this like response to her because she was like very like, I don't know, I guess everyone learned what media training was and then immediately was like, she's not media trained. And like,
really?
She was very like frank with the press when confronted by people and in planned interviews in saying like, my privacy is important to me. No one is entitled to my personal information, my family's personal information, my like energy in a moment when I hadn't previously agreed to be giving it to you. And it's one thing to be like a fan saying that you appreciate her work. And it's another thing to be like someone yelling at her to pose for a photo. And I think that, we see famous people being gracious and are like, that's nice and good and people should be gracious. And then also the like circumstances under which they're being gracious are like totally unfathomable to us. And so the Heated Rivalry boys, I feel like have so far managed to mostly come across as very gracious and have also been given a ton of grace by, I think, a bunch of people who are relieved to get to enjoy something during a dark time. And as a result, have been able to like set boundaries and say like, we are people separate from these characters and we're happy to talk about the relationship of these characters with you, but not necessarily our own relationships or our own lives outside of this beyond what we've previously agreed to share, which is, I think, ultimately a fair and healthy choice.
Yeah, that's a great framing for that. I love whatever happened in their media training. First of all, I think they have done a phenomenal job. Also, it really looks, and from what they have said online, like they're really like good friends now, which I'm sure makes it a lot easier not being isolated and by themselves. But yeah, they just seem to be a joy in all of the videos in which they are together, acting or not, but it seems fun.
Yeah, I feel like they're very charming and like cute together. And I also am like, I'm very happy to be like cognizant of parasocial relationships as a thing that can quickly get out of hand. And also to be like, oh, we got some new guys and they're fun to, look at their little outfits, look at the carefully selected anecdotes they have to share with us. And I'm very happy to do that. And I don't need to know their mother's maiden name or when they lost their virginity. I don't think that it's my right to know those things.
Yes. or their sexuality.
That's like such a thing. I have, like I've talked about the show with other queer people mostly, and I have friends who are like angry that they won't talk about their sexuality publicly because they're playing these gay characters or these queer characters, and they're like part of this phenomenon. And the perspective that I have heard there is like, you are not in a position where it would be harmful to your livelihood to speak openly about your identity, and you're lucky that that's the case, and you should take this as an opportunity to make other people feel emboldened in much the same way as, Scott and Kip do in episode 3. I personally sympathize with that perspective and don't agree with it. I don't agree that actors should tell us their sexuality. I feel like it's one thing if it's clear that they don't have respect for the story that they're telling or for the people who are implicated by the story they're telling. And there have been situations in the past where, you can tell that actors are not operating with a lot of respect for trans or queer people when they're playing them. I don't love that, Jared Leto got a star turn as a trans woman and is a huge creep.
Fair, yes.
That being said, I think that Hudson Williams and Connor's story, separately from whatever I can infer about them based on my gaydar that I have, are speaking really respectfully about both the show that they're in and the broader implications of it. And it's really clear that they are, no matter what their personal sexuality is, that they're not coming from a place of voyeurism or oversimplification or anything like that. It feels like they have a lot of respect for what they made, and what they made is important to a lot of people. And that is ultimately, especially because it's good. I've seen a lot of queer media made entirely by queer people, featuring queer people, that's bad. And I am actually, I think that we deserve good TV shows. And I'm not going to be I'd rather have a shitty TV show that a gay person made. I know a lot of gay people. We can't all do everything. I can't cook.
Yes. We can't do everything well. We're not supposed to be able to do that.
That's a big ask. Mm-hmm. What do you think about it? Do you feel like they should tell us?
No. I think they get to do whatever they want to. I don't know if they're withholding it for the fan factor. If we know they're straight and we're really into it, then we wouldn't believe it or whatever. But also they owe us nothing. I'm not invested in that. And maybe I am, because while watching, I'm I really don't think that Ilya is Russian. But you know what I'm not going to do is Google it right now. I'll Google it later to confirm my assumptions here. But I'm just going to be in this moment thinking that this guy is actually from Russia and a hockey player and all of these things. But it didn't matter. Once I looked it up, there's not any part of me that was oh, I guess because he's not actually Russian, then I don't like the show anymore. So why am I going to care if they're not gay men doing it doesn't change the story.
Yeah, exactly. I think it would be one thing if they were going around being disrespectful about the existence of gay people or whatever the subject matter of the story, but they're just not. And so it's not. And it is also not true that gay men don't work in Hollywood. So I don't think that they're taking an opportunity away from a queer actor or something like that, which I know is also people are understandably frustrated by the idea of there's always a straight man playing a gay character rather than, hiring a gay actor, because there's this idea that a gay actor is going to be too feminine or whatever, which is just obviously homophobia. I also think that there are a lot of actors whose sexualities we actually don't know and just make assumptions about. And that is their business. There are a lot of people in my life whose sexualities I just make assumptions about. When I go to the grocery store, I'm not it changes the tenor of this transaction, whether or not you are gay.
It's another great point.
I I feel like cognizant of the irony of being like, we're not entitled to information about them, or like the parasociality of it is weird. And then also we're like talking about them and their sexuality and whatever, even if only to say that it's none of our business. And like, it's a weird thing because I can't imagine that happening to me. Like if I heard people even just saying, it's none of our business whether Lindsay is gay, I would still be like, why are you talking about me at all? And like, given that until very recently, these were just like two guys who remind me of a lot of other people that I know and were not at all famous, I think that they're operating with an enormous amount of grace under really freaky circumstances. And like, I almost wish that part of the reason that I have like stopped really engaging with like their interviews and stuff as much is because I'm like, I'm sure eventually they'll do or say something that I find kind of off-putting, and that I don't really like begrudge them that unless it's something that's like truly horrible. And so I don't really want to know about it unless it's like actually an indictment of their character.
Yeah. And this is going to be a random question because I'm just thinking about it now. A lot of the parasocial relationships seem to come from, I mean, both middle-aged, but also younger women in particular. And I remember last year, I do believe it was last year, many of the podcasts that I was listening to and news that I was reading / listening to were all in a panic because Gen Z didn't want to see sex in shows. Like UCLA study like proved that Gen Z was over it. Like, and the Gen Xers and the millennials were just all like in a tizzy about this, like, and judging Gen Z for not wanting sex. And I don't know why people, one, were studying it and two, care. I guess they were studying it for market reasons. But what do you think that's about? Because clearly the people love the sex in the show.
That's so true. I feel like, I mean, that was such a weird point in time when that was, obviously it's still very much a part of the conversation, but there was a moment where it was like every headline was like, Gen Z will never, ever fuck. Sorry, can I say that? Should I repeat that?
Yeah, I mean, this is already going to be an adult-themed episode.
Yeah. And I was born at the end of 1997, so I'm like kind of Gen Z or a millennial, depending on who is being less embarrassing at any given moment. But I feel like I thought it was a valid conversation because I think it dovetails with questions about whether younger people are getting more conservative and more puritanical, and whether we are being sold, like the trad wife conversation that we've had a lot of times, like ideas about, you know, sex and sexuality that are packaged as being like, I just don't want to see all that, or like, it's just none of your business, but are actually, you know, regressive ideas about like sex shouldn't be portrayed. And if you like watching sex, then there's something wrong with you and stuff like that. So I feel like it's simultaneously kind of like, get off their backs, they're kids. Why are you like researching whether they're having sex? But then also I'm like, I do understand that. And I understand potential concerns about it. I feel like, though, with Heated Rivalry, there is this existing massively successful genre of like BL or boys love, which is like gay content that women mostly read that's mostly about men. And it isn't an American phenomenon, and I don't remember where it originated, but it has become like now something that people around the world engage with very enthusiastically. And by people, I mostly mean like young women and also middle-aged women, actually, I guess. And like my connection to that would be like when I was 13 years old reading like fan fiction about the characters from Harry Potter being in love with each other. So like, I think that part of what made it so silly when everybody reacted to the show by saying like, why do women like this? Why do straight women like this? Why do older women like this? Why do gay women like all of these like groups of people where it was like, why would you enjoy this high quality television show with well-composed shots and a compelling love story and hot sex? Like crossing people off a list who they didn't think should be allowed to enjoy it for some reason. And it is, I guess, noteworthy that none of those headlines were, why does Gen Z like Heated Rivalry? in the same way, like you're posing that question now, and that's the first time I've really heard that, even though we had this whole panic about how Gen Z doesn't want to have sex. I have not seen a headline that's like, famously prudish young people enjoy gay hockey smut, question mark, exclamation point.
Yes.
But I think that specifically as it pertains to like why straight women like it, or rather why women who have sex with men like it, because that isn't necessarily entirely straight women, but like women who conceive of their sexuality mainly in relationships with straight cis men, the group of people that I feel like I've seen the most like baffled headlines about. I think that it's an opportunity to enjoy a relationship that you don't have to wonder about how you would be treated in that context because it has nothing to do with you. And for a lot of women, that can feel really freeing because a lot of women have been treated very poorly by men. And I've seen that said a lot. And then something that I was really like struck by about it also is that there is a like, there's like a dominance and submission in the relationship between Ilya and Shane that is not like, it's not like this is like 50 Shades of Grey, but there are like moments between them that are like very mildly kinky or like demonstrate a power dynamic would be more accurate. And I think that those are like ideas that when we see them in pop culture and they're between women and men, there is always this assumption of a woman being submissive and a man being dominant. And an idea that like, if that dynamic were to be subverted, then like we can play with that, but that means that the woman is masculine and the man is feminized. And at the end of the day, that is like less appealing. And that if you are a woman and you're thinking to yourself, like, I'm interested in the idea of like seeing a man be submissive or even just seeing a man yearn for me, which puts him in a position where I have power over him, that's masculinizing of you and feminizing of him. And, you know, it relates to like the phenomenon of, you know, I was into him, but then he was into me and now he gives me the ick. Like, I don't like seeing anyone who's into me, I wouldn't want to hang out with, which is like a larger psychological problem. But also in the context of this show, I feel like it's very telling that when the dynamic is between two people who are assumed to already have power on an equal level and not just like the amount of power that is afforded to any straight cis man, but like they're professional athletes, they're like multimillionaires, they're physically very strong. Neither of them is a danger to the other in any way. And so when one makes the decision to submit to the other or to yearn for the other, there's nothing like presupposed about that. And therefore it is like imbued with specific meaning. And it's a unique, beautiful moment between these two people, or a unique, sexy moment between these two people, where one of them is saying like, you make me want to act this way, rather than who I am makes me be this way inherently. And it's a subversion rather than like a confirmation of a stereotype. And I think that women who want to like engage with submission don't want to feel like they're doing it and it's because they're a woman, and they're confirming that at the end of the day, every woman wants to be like treated like, you know, either pop culture examples of like Nicole Kidman in Baby Girl and Sydney Sweeney's character in Euphoria, the second season, asking Jacob Elordi to like pick out her clothes for her and tell her how to dress and how to act, and Sabrina Carpenter being pulled around by her hair on her album cover. And then going a step beyond that, like examples from the pornography that most people have been exposed to that are like of women being like subdued or treated with like a lot of violence. And so I feel like you might say, I see the concept of dominance and submission. I see it as erotic. If I choose to participate in it, I am buying into a whole set of values that I don't want to have to buy into to have this specific experience between me and this partner. And I feel like that makes it overly fraught for a lot of women. When you see it between two men, it's like, even though men are castigated for being overly feminine, it's not something that they have access to. In the context of this show, where neither of them is facing like maltreatment from anyone in their lives, they just get to say like, I have chosen to be with you because it's worth it to me, rather than I have chosen to be with you because at the end of the day, that's all I am, is just a you know, person who exists to be subjugated.
Right. Very interesting. And to run it back to the youth, I think what you were saying in a very like thorough and academic way is that maybe Gen Z was tired of seeing the same sex like over and over again and wanting to see more complexity, more nuance, more power dynamics in a different way, and wanted to see it in a good show, like super good, well-made show that it was like really believable and offered things to women of all ages. Yes, relationships and things that we just haven't seen on screen. So, yeah, 100% agree.
I feel like it's like I have seen especially queer people saying that like they think that the way that women who currently identify as straight engage with this show makes it so that they can explore their sexuality without actually exploring their sexuality, and say that derisively, which I think is like, to be derisive about that is to like miss out on so much of what makes that an interesting idea. Like the idea of straight women feeling like, oh, maybe I'm not straight, and the safest way for me to explore that feeling is through this relationship between two men, is like such a rich possibility. And to just be like, don't use my TV show that way is like, I feel like we miss out. Like I maybe, depending on who those women are, wouldn't enjoy talking to them about it, but that doesn't mean they shouldn't do that. I want them to have that conversation with themselves or with their boyfriends, or to realize that they're not straight or that they're not women. And I think that that is an opportunity that everyone deserves to get to have, even if I might have a reflexive desire as a queer person to be like, don't look at my thing, don't talk about my thing, don't misunderstand or mischaracterize something that I have strong feelings about. And I have had that feeling very much, but also I'm like, it's not my thing. It's a TV show from Canada.
Well, right. And I can't think of another TV show that has galvanized conversation fandom in such a way. And I think that goes back to what you were saying. Like, it's good. Like, it's just a good show. Oh, the thing that I was going to say that I forgot, the men of it all, like, these are not like feminine men. These are, you know, I'm not going to call them hyper masculine, but sports inherently is like, these are masculine men. Yes, men, which doesn't mean anything. And I know that people are listening. And secondhand, the way that one of my patients learned about heated rivalry was because she's more conservative and was watching her TikTok algorithm give her a pastor, male pastor, who was talking about how it's okay for him to watch heated rivalry and how it's okay that it exists, because these are real men. These are men who are having sex with men. These are men who are engaging in this. It's not some like feminine man. So it makes it, and I was like, oh, sir, like, first of all, thank you for telling us that you watched Heated Rivalry. We do love that for you. Also, are you coming out to us? Because what you're saying is that it's okay to be gay if you're like a man, a real man having sex with a real man. So, I mean, maybe that's just what you're coming into and seeing, and questioning your gender or questioning your sexuality. Random aside. Sorry.
That's so interesting. And also with such a roller coaster, I had no idea where it was going with every word. I was like, and then the pastor, and then he thinks it's okay. And then, wow. Well, also, I feel like this is not even like my whatever thing to, there are like such stringent standards of appearance and masculinity among gay men. Like, it's so ridiculous to me when straight people are like, well, it's okay because those are masculine gay men. And it's like, gay men are out here telling each other that they like won't even go on a date if they're too feminine. They're out here holding each other to body standards that would make like Logan Paul look like he had a desk job. Like, I don't think that straight people understand how hard gay men are working to look like that. In episode 3, Kip, he just like is a smoothie shop employee, right? And he is like jacked beyond belief. And I assume that that's just because he's an out gay man in New York City.
right? He has so many jobs, he doesn't have time to do all of these things, but apparently he spends like 3 hours at the gym every day. I don't know.
Yeah. It's just genetic. It's just, he just looks like that because he never eats corn because corn is candy, and he does drink milk, and he was not vaccinated for polio.
Therefore, you end up looking, yes, like a
action figure. I don't know. I don't want to, I have respect for that man. He looks great. I don't want to insult him. I just think it's the rest of the show. It's like contextually appropriate that the characters look like that because they're all professional athletes, even though I feel like hockey players are usually like more bulky and hairy. It's fine.
Right.
But then that guy, it's like, I mean, come on, that guy shouldn't look like that.
I fully agree. What do you want to say about shame?
Thank you so much for asking. I feel like at the end of the day, the idea is that they are trying to avoid a sense of shame by keeping their relationship a secret, that ultimately they are slowly realizing maybe they don't have to feel. People who are watching the show are being like in this roundabout way shamed by the question of why do you like this? And like, what would possibly compel you, a straight woman or any other one of the groups where it's like, why would you ever watch this? There's a inflection of shame to the question of like, why do women like this show? I think. And I feel like it is genuinely a step toward neutralizing the type of reflexive shame that so readily becomes hate that we are seeing right now be turned into like attacks on trans and queer people when there is a TV show that creates a context where suddenly all of these athletes want to come forward and say that they're queer, and creates a context where suddenly we're having conversations about other media that could be made based on the success of this, that, maybe a year ago we would have been saying there's no audience for that. I genuinely think that like when we're looking at the success of the show, and there is an episode that is breaking a record that was set by Breaking Bad, which is one of the most like, there are some examples of toxic masculinity that you can draw lines directly from that to the founding of this country. Like when that happens and all of the conversation about this show is at such a fever pitch, I genuinely think that it gets a little bit harder for conservatives to claim that their weird niche fascist views are actually the norm.
Interesting. Okay. And so does this show set the bar for every show with sex in it to come?
With sex in it is, I thought you were going to be like queer shows, but no, with sex in it. Yeah. Because this was really good sex. It was very hot. It was very well shot. It was shot in such a way that I didn't feel like the actors were being, like objectification isn't even the right like metric for this, but it felt like respectful of their bodies or whatever.
It didn't feel exploitative. Like just
exactly.
They were just like naked to be naked.
Yes. And it was like a good reminder that sex is a thing two people can do together and therefore an important part of storytelling, or any number of people, whatever. If you're out, listeners, have sex with as many people as you want at the same time.
Yes.
But like, to go back to the like, Gen Z doesn't want sex in their movies, or like in general, people don't like it when there's sex in media. Like media is about things that people do together or apart. And one of those things is sex, and it moves the plot forward. And it also doesn't have to move the plot forward as long as it's done respectfully and it's not exploitative. But in this show, it very much moves the plot forward. All of those sex scenes are like crucial to understanding the dynamic between those characters. And also they're really hot. Like that is so impressive. To me, yes, that is going to set the bar for movies and TV shows with sex in them going forward.
Yeah. And there's a lesbian sporty one, I don't know, coming out. And I am nervous already that the sex is going to be like holding hands and like then they disappear into a bedroom. And yeah. And like the next day we'll see like panties, which I hate that word, on the floor. but like it'll be like dainty panties like over there, because the like promotion of the film or the series, I don't know, it's like, oh, you liked Heated Rivalry, you'll love this. And I'm like, will people? And then like that hard comparison of like, oh, this lesbian, series is so boring in comparison that it won't stand alone. And honestly, if it is as good a show, I think that's another situation here. A lot of stuff just isn't going to be as good a show. I feel like it's better than Breaking Bad because it is also so good, not just for the sex in it. So I feel like people making like jumping on the bandwagon, talking about queer shows, like, I don't want you to set people up. So like this lesbian series is like a snore fest or a snooze fest.
Yeah, no, I feel the same way about it, especially because I think that like everything that I think that makes two men together accessible to women does not necessarily apply about two women together. And that there are like women who are afraid to reckon with their sexuality, which is a group that I've been in, so I can say whatever I want about them, is like, it's a lot scarier to watch something that feels like you could actually be part of it and then be wondering, like, is that what I want? Am I attracted to those women? Do I feel turned on by this? Like, all those questions get a lot scarier when you're watching two women together. And then when you think about the fact that, like, at the end of the day, the main audience of Heated Rivalry has been women, you realize that to say, if you liked Heated Rivalry, you'll like this, is actually kind of a flawed marketing plan. Because I don't think that that audience is going to necessarily get the same thing out of, like, did you watch A League of Their Own, the League of Their Own TV show?
No, not the TV show.
The TV show was so good, and it had pretty good sex in it. Not as good as Heated Rivalry. Sex was okay. There was a lot more cutting away. But like, I feel like it got canceled and obviously did not get nearly the same fervor, in part because like there isn't as much of an inborn audience for that. And there is like all of the same ideas about like what it means for a woman to yearn, what it means for a woman to submit are like, oh, well, it's two women. Of course they're like that. That's not subversive, which is like completely untrue, obviously, about a lesbian relationship. But I think that it doesn't like pluck the same strings societally. And so I am also really anxious about it being framed that way and about what that will mean.
Yeah. There is a novel out there. It is about Cleat Cute. Actually, I think I've recommended it to you. And it is very sexy. Not as early as Heated Rivalry. And like the straight women that I know have read it and enjoyed it, the queer ones as well. But I think it is because, again, the sex is good sex and the story is good. I mean, sports again. Yeah, sports again. So, but yeah, if this ends up being like pinky holding or whatever it is, you know, and that's what we get, and it's not good. Yeah, anxious. And will one ever be made again? Will it just be assumed to be like women don't want to see lesbians having sex or whatever it is? Like, it can be done in a way that everybody likes it, but will that happen? Or will filmmakers, series like television makers, like be afraid of what people are going to think of two women? Yeah. And then women will compare bodies, right?
Yeah. It's so fraught. And I want to be able to be like, Heated Rivalry is the beginning of a bunch of queer media that we could get featuring all kinds of people. And I also realistically don't necessarily think that that's true. I also think that, like, very cynically, that society has a limited tolerance for everybody talking about queer people at the same time. And that like, there's already always a backlash to anyone who gets too famous too fast, and anything that gets talked about too much is people start to be like, I'm sick of hearing about that. I'm like, I don't like it anymore. And then you add homophobia to that, and it's like, okay, you're running out the clock on this whole thing. Show me, you know, some horrible rom-com with Glenn Powell. And I just like, I want to be wrong, but that feels like way more likely to me to be the thing that happens next, which, you know, that's not to say that like we're never going to make good queer movies or TV again, because obviously we did before this and we will after this. But like, I think it's overly simplistic when they're like, if you liked Heated Rivalry, you'll love two women holding pinkies, a sports story.
It's been a journey.
It's been a journey.
Anything else that you would like to share?
Yes, I think that the focus specifically on the people in the show, the actors in the show, totally makes sense because they're charming and pretty and they're very good at giving interviews about it. And I have enjoyed getting to have some fun actors to pay attention to. I also think that like the conversations that people are having about sexuality and media and like the people who are literally coming out because they feel like it's a good moment to do so. That is like the lasting legacy of this show. And that's like more interesting to me and more like what I appreciate about getting to talk to you about this than, you know, anyone who wants to speculate about like those specific guys and their lives and their sexuality. And I think that, you know, the headline that was like basketball player comes out as gay and married for 18 months is like, yep. I one day hope to come out as married for 18 months. That's like the ultimate hard launch. But like, also, it's genuinely like wild that we could live in a world where legislation is happening based on the idea that like, actually queer people have gained too much ground and actually we need to like push back against it. And then you're getting like professional athletes who have tons of money and tons of privilege and resources saying like, only now do I feel safe telling you that I have been married for over a year to a man. Like that is the reality that I feel like the show has rightfully reminded people of. And that is an important thing for all of American society and Canadian society to be reminded of right now.
That's a good point. Lindsay, thanks for coming back on the show.
Thank you for having me, Jessica.
Anytime. Thanks so much to Lindsay for coming back on the show. Last week, I mentioned that I had two friends who were a couple episodes into Heated Rivalry and were kind of bored by it. Former podcast guest Kent Thomas wanted to come out to the podcast community as one of them. He says he's still working through his ambivalence about the show, but as of this recording, has not watched episode 6. And I'm curious to see if the time Shane and Ilya spend at the cottage and the episode from which a lot of the merch is based upon will change his mind. I'll have that update and much more to share on next week's episode. Until then, friends, make it awkward. This has been Making It Awkward. I'm Jessica Wilson. You can support the show by rating, subscribing, reviewing. You can email the pod at makingitawkwardpod@gmail.com. If you leave reviews or comments, my dad will come back to the show to read them. This podcast is edited by Jen Jacobs, who has not yet read or watched Heated Rivalry. This show is sponsored by the Legacy of Sacramento Outboard Services and a production of The Body Politic.